Welcome to the first Castalia Reading of 2015-2016. Great. That's great. Before we officially get started, I just wanted to say a couple of words to officially launch the series for the year. Let's see. So, Castalia is the name that we're flying under. It was originally the name of a Greek nymph who was turned into a fountain at Delphi by Apollo. And it was said that anyone who listened to her waters or drank from the fountain would receive poetic inspiration or the genius of poetry. So I hope that the words that you hear not just tonight but all year are equally rewarding. For us, Castalia is the name of a reading series that's organized by the graduate students of the University of Washington MFA program. It features current students, alumni, and our wonderful professors. So it's always a lovely evening here. And I wanted to take a minute to appreciate all of our second years who've been organizing this. So if you guys want to stand up, I was going to read you guys off alphabetically. Do we not want to stand up? What? No, I heard a lot of hashtags. Great, clap. Cameron, Kristen Dorada, Tyler Kipling, Aaron McCoy, Abby Peppercock, and Patrick Runyon. Good job, guys. So this series would not really be happening without all of those people. Thank you for all of your hard work. Yes, love it. So as you can see, we're all super excited to be here at the Hugo House, right? Public planning. It's really great to be here specifically at the Hugo House because it's wonderful really not just to attend readings here but also to be able to give back to that literary community and that literary tradition here. So we're really excited for a year of great readings and I hope you'll be at the other ones. And without further ado, I'd like to bring up our MCs for the year, Rachel Edelman and Tim Anderson, who will be guiding us through all of these events. Or just Tim, yes.
Hi, I am Tim. My compatriot here, Rachel, is also an MC tonight. You are about to hear a bunch of graduate students. There is a bar right there where you can purchase drinks. I already have. And the bartender's name is Drew, and you should give her a fat tip. Couple things. Again, I'd like to thank the Hugo House and Max at the front desk for being here and letting us gather.
Yeah, Max!
Secondly, please remember to move your cars by 10 o'clock if you've parked in the Hugo House parking lot. Otherwise, the gates will close and your car will be locked inside until tomorrow morning, and that will bum you out. And then books by tonight's readers, the UW alumni and faculty are available for you to purchase. Just talk to Ty in the back. She's waving. Okay, so tonight's lineup includes our student writers, Catherine Walker, Cameron Louie, Tyler Kipling, and then we'll have a 15 or 10 to 15 10-minute intermission, after which we will hear the prose stylings of UW alumna Elissa Washuta. And then we'll culminate with the poetry of Professor Pimone Triplett. Great. So first up, we have Catherine Walker, who has graciously volunteered to be this year's inaugural reader. She is a first-year student in prose at the UW, and she received 2 Bachelor's of Art degrees from the University of Arizona, one in creative writing and the other in art history, and has publications on the Fairy Tale Review's online blog, Fairy Tale Files. I should admit that this will be my own first encounter with Catherine's work, so I am quite excited to hear her read her stories, which, like many classic fairy tale heroines, appear to me now disguised in the skin of a cat, or maybe a donkey.
all hear me okay? Am I a good distance? Like this good? No answer. Okay, all right. So in the interest of time, I'm only going to read a section of one of the longer pieces that I've written. So here we go. When Ted saw the horses, he thought they were real. He had been rubbing at something in his eye, and when he looked up, there they were, all a blur. They ran along the top of a bluff to the right of the train tracks, just north of Albuquerque, New Mexico, tails streaming against the sky. To Ted's surprise, they jogged loose a feeling, the wonderment of seeing the landscape roll out before him, of being able to send his mind out over it unconstrained. He hadn't really looked, at the land outside his windshield for a long time now. He smiled. Then he forgot about them, focused on taking the train safely through the Sangre de Cristo Mountains and into Colorado. Then Riley, his co-pilot, took over the train, and Ted slept on the bunk in the back of the engine compartment under the scratchy beige blanket that he folded carefully into quarters so that it wouldn't touch the floor. He did not dream about the horses. Back home in Chicago, they turned the train around. Ted wiped down the controls with his wet wipes, and they headed back to LA after a mandatory 12-hour rest. On board was a new group of passengers, relying on them to get them to their destination in a safe and timely manner, and Ted was moderately confident he could deliver. He suspected he was going to be Employee of the Year, which would be nice, but privately he would rather have a real job, like the business degree job he was supposed to have, the one with the leather chair and a tidy little cubicle. Wouldn't a job like being a tax compliance manager or a payroll director, even without Employee of the Year, be better than being Employee of the Year at Amtrak? He would go unrecognized if it got him a leather chair. Just north of Albuquerque, on the westbound run, the horses were running in the same place along the very same ridgeline. Ted rubbed at his eyes. He looked over his shoulder to see if Riley was there so he could point them out to him, but Riley was in the bathroom or something. Ted looked back, and the horses were gone, without even a plume of dust to mark their passage. Ted rubbed at his eyes, harder this time. Maybe something was in one of his eyes, something that would make him see things. He wiggled two of the slider controls on the dashboard of the train very slightly until they were exactly in line with one another, and shoved the horses to the back of his mind, where they lurked, unforgotten about. By the time they arrived in LA, he had decided that maybe it was a floater in his eye, a horse-shaped floater, that was all. It'd be crazy to see things that weren't there, except if they were floaters. He must be getting old to start having floaters. Or maybe the sun had hit his eyes just right. A few months later, on the way back to Chicago, somewhere around the middle of Kansas, he saw the covered wagon and jumped when he spotted it. But really, there was no reason to react like that. This was Little House on the Prairie Land, after all. Probably there were all kinds of things out there just like this one. He squinted at it, trying to bring it into focus, trying to decide if it was really abandoned, and wondered about the family that might have left it there. How could they have packed up all their things, their ordinary lives, into a wagon and started out for a new life? He thought about what the inside of the wagon must have looked like, thought about how they would have their blankets in a tiny little chest, their pots and pans on hangers on the arched beams, how he would have put his suitcase under the seat at the front. He would make a change like that for a leather chair, couldn't he? And then he thought maybe the wagon was moving. Was it moving? Ted's heart began to pound. It was like when the person in the parking spot next to you starts to pull out, but it looks like it's your car moving and not theirs. It didn't make sense how the wagon could keep pace with the train, a P-40 DC model Genesis unit, which had a top speed of 130 miles per hour. Not that Ted was the kind of person who ever drove at top speed. Ted drove his knuckles into his eyes. It was an abandoned covered wagon, nothing out of the ordinary. Hey, all okay up there? Riley must have seen something. Ted snatched his knuckles out of his eyes. Yeah, fine. You don't sound fine. Is it about Sarah still? What had possessed Ted to tell Riley about that last night? He had just been trying to get to know the guy since they'd been driving together for over a year now. And Sarah was in the past. Far in the past. He should be over it by now. No, it's not about Sarah. I thought I saw something, he said, nudging three of the slider controls into the exact center of their positions. Like what? An old covered wagon. I guess there's probably lots of old stuff like that out there. All that Western settlement junk. I'm surprised we don't see more of it, actually. Yeah, I was thinking that too. They settled into a silence, and then Ted said, how could anyone do that, you know? Just pick up their lives and move like that. Riley shrugged. For 2 round trips from Chicago to LA and back again, he kept his eyes on the tracks and saw nothing unusual. until in the middle of Iowa, out of the corner of his eye, he saw something blue far off to the side of the tracks. He looked. It was a girl on the platform of a Triplett train station, a blue ribbon in her hair and luggage by her side, off to start a new life. She was there, then gone as he sped past. It had probably only been a blue flower, something that was actually there, not just in his head, in his eyes rather. Very eye-catching in the middle of Iowa cornfields in summer, green corn stalks reaching up to the windshield, his shaking knocked one of the slider controls slightly askew. A few nights later, after Ted had arrived at his Chicago outskirts apartment, he was brushing his teeth when it occurred to him that he could maybe go see an eye doctor. His stomach clenched at the thought. But it just had to be something with his eyes. He simply couldn't make up things like this. They were so far outside of the things he felt himself capable of imagining. He was a business major, after all. But if it was a problem with his eyes, that was scary enough by itself. Was he really getting so old? He supposed he was. His 42nd birthday loomed just next month. He applied his toothbrush with extra vigor, determined that even if his eyes were failing, he would hang on to his teeth at least. Then he put on his blue and white striped pajamas, the ones his grandfather had gotten him because they were the exact colors of a conductor's cap for his 19th birthday, even though he was already too old for trains then, and climbed into bed. The next morning, he decided that perhaps he should see an eye doctor in LA rather than Chicago. The doctors were better down there anyway, weren't they? About a month later, at 85 miles an hour in the middle of a Colorado night, there was quite suddenly a tree growing out of the center of the tracks, and he needed to stop, needed to stop, needed to stop. The train seemed to Ted to be traveling very slowly for 85 miles an hour, more than enough time for him to watch his hand descend and clasp the emergency brake. It might be his best option, but he hesitated to pull it. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his heart thudded slowly in his ears. Never mind that it would be bad for the train to stop suddenly like that from around 85 miles an hour. The emergency brake was a thing designed on the assumption that whatever was being braked for would likely do more damage to the train than stopping at that speed would. Worse than that, it would make him late, and it would definitely get him fired if Amtrak decided he had stopped for no good reason. He swung his head around, flinging drops of sweat from his forehead, and looked back out the windshield. The tree was now close enough that even if he pulled the brake, he would never stop the train for a long time. So he didn't. Sweat stuck to the handle of the brake as he took his hand off it, making it glisten in the overhead lights, and the train sped on, the trees off to the sides of the tracks where they belonged.
Thank you, Catherine. So I'm going to introduce our next reader, Cameron Louie. Now, when Cameron was 7, he says that his sister told him that the grain of rice-sized red and black beetles that come out in the Tucson summer and mate by gluing their butts together were called African ladybugs. Recently, however, Cameron says that somebody said that these things are not actually called African ladybugs. In fact, he Googled it, I Googled it, there's no such thing as an African ladybug. And so that kind of got me to thinking about Cameron's poems, because Cameron's poems, bear with me, they just constantly upend expectation. You think that they're going one way, and then they go somewhere completely different. His work cycles from absolute confidence in something to paralyzing doubt. And he mixes colloquial language with very intricate and technical images that entrance until they dissolve. So I wondered, does Cameron Louie exist? As a reader going through his poems, I feel like Lewis Carroll's Mock Turtle singing the lobster quadrille refrain. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you? Will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you? Won't you join the dance? So, Cameron, will you? Will you, won't you? Will you come to the stage?
All right. time. Yeah, Castalia. I wanted to say something about that also, since she's all about having us drink. Cheers to you guys from the genius of poetry. Yeah, so I'm gonna read some poems, and a smart friend of mine recently said something to the effect of that in the poetry world it's kind of assumed that because we know how to read, because we can speak, that we know how to give a reading. And that's kind of like just saying because you know how to pee, that you know how to fix a toilet. I'm butchering the words there, but I think that's incredibly apt, and we've had some lively, excellent discussions about how a poem should be read. And so now I'm going to come up here and do that, and I guess I'd like to just ask you to think of this as maybe my proposition of a couple different types of plunger you might use, like one with a feather on the end, a pink sparkly one. So this is called Welcome Note. The trick is that everything is here exactly as you imagined it. You find the welcome note attached to the door. You've already seen most of the rooms and organized papers. Patterns on teacups, bed sheets, blouses are average floral, hats are in boxes, boots are tied in most of the standard double knot methods, but for God's sake, don't do the bunny in the hole. Don't. Do certain things. Bunny in the hole. Slowly, water through a pipe. Write about birds. No more serifs. Bend over with bad intentions. Words that come from places. Do dream of humiliation. Be without form as though a gash. Split infinitives saucily. Go through warm fogs. Spit in a can. Sleeping in. Your dream was dusky alleys, mist, and mercados. That's done now. You wake up. Later, a scene in which you wake up again and realize it was all a dream. Like in a movie, roll over, hit the clock, do that thing where you stretch all of your limbs, pendiculation. Is there someone else in bed with you? Have you disturbed them with this rolling, smashing of clocks, pendiculation? You snored loudly and feeling stiff, pull on pants. The dream finds you just getting your belt together, something about cobblestones or adobe. Definitely a place for sure, and there was another you hanging around in that place. Doubles and others make pretty common literary appearances, so you feel neither surprise nor arousal. What do you feel? Is it indifference? The other you resembled Hamlet or Tom Hanks in The Burbs, but waking too abruptly, you've gotten them mixed up. Hamlet is weeping in the kitchen of his middle-class home, shaking his sword at Carrie Fisher, who will drown in the brook. Take this quick test to find out how you feel. When I think of the future, in general, I feel unsettled. Strongly agree, disagree, agree, strongly disagree. The correct answer is strongly agree. You feel unsettled. Now your fly is zipped and you recall a road that runs into the south, where there is an intersection with 5 points. The only one in the city, like a starfish in a lake. Home. She is happy, laughing about an old joke from a popsicle stick. It's still funny, even though she can't quite recall the punchline, something about a turtle. She wants to tell the people at Thanksgiving dinner who all feel well, loved, and talk together with kindness and real warmth about the joke. As she begins, an uncle interrupts and tells everyone over pie about the news he read. A child born featureless, without a face. That space completely smooth, like an egg. Then, like magic, a boy without a face is sitting at the table, waiting for his pie to be served, which has already been served and is on a white plate with oriental flowers in front of him. the host of the dinner is thinking about killing her husband with a tennis racket. After dinner, the husband of the host gives his wife, the host, a copper ring. A beautiful young man leaves the table, walks upstairs, takes off his clothes, sits down in a bathtub, and feels upset about his father's mistress, who has no copper rings. Home lock. A young person decides to end the external operations of his life, social, financial, reproductive, i.e. all activity requiring movement outside current residence, and to go the way of the hermit. Here is another beloved literary figure. This is called hikikomori. The hikikomori's home is comfortable, private, and large. The logistics are surprisingly simple. Food can be delivered to the doorstep, money earned online. Like a guru, the hikikomori takes an occasional visitor. Like a brain in a jar, the visitor will wonder about difficulties, friendship, and love, and responsibility, all burdensome, and leave gifts at the hikikomori's doorstep when he does not answer. The hikikomori becomes old inside his home, but the visitors remain young, and their gifts pile up. All right, this is called doing it wrong. No fun breathing in, but breathing out a way to hurry there, wherever, anywhere. New is just around the bend, and old that isn't tired yet a leaking. Time your extra buckets, hold themselves to build, avoid decide to say, to take a contract signed, with life to leave to lie, beneath a leaky sink, mouth open like a farm bird, in the rain to take, to fill to drown the things. You miss going too fast, you miss things going at a certain speed, you miss the same things going any slower. Take that, Charles Olson. This is called doing it right. Oh, man. All right. Doing it right. Ring cuts down a tree, so precise the little cuts, more of a building than a tearing down. A tree that gets to fall uphill, and Ring, master of gravity, says that his dreams are worse, and wet dreams are already worse. They are building up 100 trees, falling silently in a silent film. It's not. When Ring holds his saw, he wraps his thumb over the top like you're supposed to. Part of the music in displacing wood, to make nature your bitch, is in the way you hold the saw. For some, a rabid, sputtering dog kept at bay, held at arm's length, until you send it running at a dummy. In Ring's hands, in Ring, the saw is a thing in itself, but from one tree length away, I watch another sawyer. She does not hold the saw like a cello, hands wrapped around its breathing, shuddering bars. She does not bring it to a tree with expectation, lust. She does not see the tree weeks later that Ring, tugging at his beard, calls it his mask, and makes eyes at women who do not know what he does to trees. She does not see him choke the saw and walk away from one he wants. Every day, the forest changes. All right, I've got one more. Castalia! This is called fear of driving. Marry this voice to what you're afraid of, what when you, other than expected, instructed. My pre-trip inspection. Would you mind? Carefully. Tonight, let's go somewhere. It'll feel fragile. Abiding, you'll be right to worry it'll break. Worrying the beams of any celebrated ceiling. Kiss the stained glass with concrete. Discomfort, tip. Unpleasant, tip. Vehophobes turning into the slide. Surely the safest way to dominate a body's destined drift, caught without requisite friction, slick, the steady burn of language in the ear. No use in trying to regain the front seat of Newton's screwed jalopy, quantum chromed out rims, and we yelling directions from the back seat. Thanks.
Well, Cameron, that was pretty good. I still don't know where your lines break. Just kidding, I don't know anything about lineation. So.
Me neither, Tim.
Alright, so our next reader is a second-year prose writer, Ty Kipling. Half of her is from Seattle, and the other half is from LA, where she grew up, she says, talking to trees. Ty's fiction, which often employs a narrator who dives into a character's deepest psychology and pulls out the most intense and intimate of fears, is currently most informed by her thesis, so if I were you, I wouldn't talk to her about that. In fact, I would suggest that you not bring up the thesis around any of the second-year students. Unless they already know what they're doing, in which case you probably won't have to ask. Like if you want, you can find me after the reading, and I'll tell you about the novel I'm writing. It's very original. And the whole thing is told from the perspective of a loaf of bread. And also the loaf of bread happens to be an unreliable narrator. No, in all seriousness, you are in for a treat. Because Ty's links stories about family bonds between daughters and mothers, between sisters, and the variety of imposters that threaten them has made for some of the most compelling reading in our prose workshop, as well as some of the most poignant and, more often than not, deeply moving. So I give you Ty Kipling.
Tim. That was too kind. I guess I'll read this, although I really just want to hear about the loaf of bread now. I mean, you've ruined my interest in my work now. All right. So this is an excerpt from a story that is rather long. So I'm trying to shorten it for you all. Hopefully it'll still make sense. All right, here we go. Why are they here? Two barely grown girls scratching their way across Spain on mom and dad's money. Eli tagging along, part unwilling chaperone, part young American woman taking in the continent, on Mia's high school graduation trip. She's trying to be a writer, remembering that Hemingway once passed through here. She's read too little of Cervantes to trace his name in her travels, and knows no other classic Spanish authors to call upon. Sharing rooms with Mia draws forth a misplaced nostalgia, as though they are reliving the past in a new location. Eli's childhood self appears in the space between their beds, in the stray light that twists beneath the curtains at night. Light that flared against her tiredness when they were children, when Mia would jump from the bottom bunk and edge the door open, maddeningly, just to disturb her. Now again they whisper to each other in the dark and listen for each other's breath, trying to read sleep or wakefulness in the intake and release. In Spain, when they bicker over expenses or how to spend days without obligation, there is no urgency to their conflicts. The same conflicts. Eli's need for space, Mia's desire for constant engagement. Even as they argue, they know they are merely repeating the same words in a new order. Mia allows Eli no veneer of politeness, no friendly facade. Eli can pretend nothing to this sister who too often voices her thoughts before she can. Every pretense of her college persona, pretense stretched like masking tape over her inadequacies, is ripped bare. In Spain, as far as she has ever been from the world that is recognizably hers, she is more like herself than she has been since the nights of her childhood. On the first night in Sevilla, Eli eats plain white rice from the Chinese restaurant down the street. Back at the hostel, Mia fidgets, hearing the throb of music and the clatter of other guests setting out for the night. Eli lies spread-eagled on her bed with its plain white sheet pulled tightly across a hard-packed mattress. "I'm sorry," she says. Her insides are awash in emptiness, her exhaustion unabated after several hours' rest in the afternoon's slow-sinking heat. "I just can't go out tonight." In Barcelona, she has balked at the suggestion of clubbing. She pointed out the distance of their apartment from the clubs. They didn't know enough about the right places to go or what was safe, and how expensive it must be with so many rich tourists willing to pay absurd entrance fees. Her strongest argument by far had been that she had her period. "There's no way I'm going to dance while I'm bloated and crampy and bleeding." Mia had grumbled and pushed back, but this final line of argument had won her over. Eli didn't say that she had no desire to preside over Mia's first forays into drunkenness, or that she didn't think their parents had sent them abroad so they could go to dark dance floors full of strange men, and that the whole idea, clubbing, was unfathomably foreign and awkward and against her every instinct. Now that they are in Sevilla, which is compact and wholly manageable, she feels an obligation to be the right kind of older sister, carefree and adventurous, ready to show Mia the ropes she knows nothing of herself. She's protected only by the remnants of this illness, the paleness in her face and her fragmented stomach. Mia picks up her slim black iPod. "I don't care about going out. I just want to dance." They spend the next hour dancing circles around each other, headphones popping from their ears each time they bump into a bed. They're too absorbed to laugh until they imagine what they might look like from outside, dancing in silence as though possessed, limbs whirling through the air. In Sevilla, Eli has illness as an excuse. But on their second night, guilt overwhelms her. This is her sister's trip, after all. "We'll go on the pub crawl," she tells Mia. "There's free drinks, and we'll maybe meet some other people from the hostel." "Oh my god, this is going to be so much fun," Mia says. "I'm so glad we're doing this together." Eli is still uneasy, but Mia's enthusiasm buoys her. "What am I going to wear?" Eli possesses two shapeless shifts to Mia's extensive collection of trendy mini dresses and glittering costume jewelry. She doesn't bother trying on anything of Mia's, though her sister would be more than willing to share. Mia's slim hips, flat stomach, and non-existent derriere render the differences in size insurmountable. Mia convinces her that a shopping excursion is in order. They find an H&M that, apart from the euro sign on the price tags, might have been lifted straight from Los Angeles. Spanish women mill around them, women who seem crafted from an identical gene pool. Tall, blonde, light-skinned, and, most consistently, thin. At least, Eli figures she will have her pick of any dresses in size large. She ends up with a plain black dress, a sleeveless cotton construction that fits more tightly than anything she has ever worn. When she steps out from the dressing room, Mia whoops in delight. "It's perfect," she exclaims. "You look so sexy." Eli laughs. Her fears dissolve against Mia's unstinting enthusiasm. That evening, they dress in their room and sing along to Beyonce, waggling their hips and exaggerating the curl of their lips for imaginary microphones. Mia insists on doing Eli's makeup, and Eli acquiesces after putting on a show of refusal. She's secretly elated by the promise of transformation carried in each stroke of mascara over her lashes, the splash of lipstick a barefaced cry for desire, and eyeshadow the color of a bruise dabbed across tremulous lids. The elation frightens her. Why does she want to be masked and subsumed so badly? But she sets it aside. Tonight, she will allow herself to be a girl who goes out and dances, and perhaps, just perhaps, find someone to kiss before the night is through. Because I want to, she assures herself, not because I need to. She has not reckoned with Mia getting drunk. Worse, she hasn't anticipated the men who flirt with her little sister. Mia finds two Australians, a 22-year-old and his 25-year-old friend, whom Eli immediately tags as too old for her sister. But she notices how attractive they are, or rather, how charming their accents are on a pair of unobjectionable bodies and faces. Finding other English speakers leads to immediate camaraderie. At each new pub on the hostel tour, they are difficult to differentiate these pubs with their dim lights and many accented crowds. The Australians cheer as Mia downs another shot. Your first night of real drinking, the younger one, Ben, says to Mia. We'll show you how to do it right. Eli wants to step in front of him with a neon sign flashing, stop, no-go zone. But Mia drinks up the attentions of the Australians, as well as the never-ending procession of shots. Eli herself abstains from more than a single drink at each pub. I've got to make sure Mia is okay, she reminds herself. This night is for her, not me. Ben focuses his attentions on Mia. The older one, Steve, watches his friend with a wary eye, and when he takes Ben aside at one point, Eli hears him mutter about how young Mia is, and how Ben had better watch himself. She appreciates this. He actually has integrity, she thinks. But she wonders why Steve doesn't want to talk to her as much as Ben talks to her sister. Just because his friend likes Mia doesn't mean he's obligated to like you. But it stings a little to be overlooked. After a couple hours of pub hopping, they arrive at their final destination, a nightclub, dark and crowded, with pulsing lights and a vast circular bar. Tequila shots follow. Mia pulls Eli into the swaying fray, and they squeal as a song they know comes on. They jump and shake and flail with exuberance to song after song, laughing together in astonishment over having discovered this wild, unrelenting fun. Then Ben finds them. He pulls Mia to him and they move against one another, their bodies seeming to ask and receive in a language Eli does not speak. She pretends not to see and dances harder, pounding her legs against the floor. Men occasionally gesture at her to dance with them or rub up against her before moving on to the next woman in their line of sight when she refuses their overtures. She's not interested in anonymous encounters. She has no desire to be a body for a male stranger to masturbate against. At some point, a change comes over the dance floor. The night has entered its deepest state when makeshift couples who had previously been grinding on each other begin to make out in earnest, a strange backwards progression from pelvis to lips. Her sister and the Australian are entwined. Mia turns in his arms and they kiss, and touching each other, they seem to melt with want. Eli is alone. She wants to run from this tinselled existence, women with glossy dresses and straightened hair throwing back shots, men sleazing their way across the back of a club and then diving into the dancing crowds to grab a body, to pull a woman's ass close to their pants and grind their dick against her, a place that makes her yearn to be objectified. All is flattened beneath the pounding of music, the slither and sway of thin, tan limbs, the scanning eyes of men. She is part of a performance now. She has placed herself under this gaze, and she wants to claim a mistake, to claim unknowing, like this isn't what she wanted. But like anyone else, she's here to be seen. And she wants so badly to be seen. Something flames within her as she pushes through the crowd of dancing bodies to find a seat in an alcove near the entrance. The conviction of her undesirability. She cringes as it rises up, the self-loathing she has nurtured ever since breasts first appeared on her chest. Consciousness of the rolls of fat across her belly and the thickness of her arms and thighs, and, most shamefully, the extra flesh that hangs beneath her chin, the betraying wobble that sealed her fate. It is easy enough to find a dance partner, to be held like a theater prop for the duration of a song, but she is certain no man will be entranced by her. She will never captivate a man like Mia captivates the Australian. She tells herself this, and she invites the shame, the loneliness, and the self-pity to enfold her. She doesn't want to remember that she doesn't have to be beautiful, that it doesn't matter what men think of her, that the kind of men who would dismiss her for her chin or her thighs or her belly should mean nothing to her. She wants to be wretched, and she won't admit what matters more than the undesirability, the ache of watching her sister plunge into this new world, this landscape of men so easily, with such confidence, when she only knows fear. She is 2 years older, yet her sister has already left her behind. 15 minutes later, Mia finds her. What are you doing out here, Mia asks. I didn't know where you were. Eli tries to keep her voice from breaking. I'm just feeling a little weird. Mia hears the tremor in her words and sits beside her sister. What's wrong? I don't feel like I belong in there. Eli tries to sound measured. She wants to be philosophical about this. But why not? You were having such a good time before. Eli shrugs. I don't know, I didn't have anyone to dance with. You can dance with me, but you're with Ben. So, well, you were like grinding with him. It was making me uncomfortable. Eli can't help the disgust that creeps into her voice. That's what you do at clubs, Mia says, growing defensive. I was having fun. Well, it's not as easy for me. Eli can barely say the words. She wants to hide somewhere to pull a curtain over her pitiful state. With all these boys, it's so easy for you. You get to be this perfect slut, and I'm trying. She gasps as another sob overtakes her. Why doesn't anyone want me? Mia stares at her. You think I'm a slut? No. Did I say that? Mia, I didn't mean it, but she has. Mia turns and walks away. Eli has broken the covenant between them. They're supposed to be on each other's side, always. She's supposed to protect Mia. She is the one who argues back when Mom screams at them or throws things. On bad days, coming home from the stress of work to find the house a mess, Mom was the one who called them lazy bitches or fat asses or worthless burdens. Mom calls them names. They're used to it, though it rarely fails to make Eli cry or to send Mia into a cold and stony near silence that lasts several days. But it is expected, an old pain, not a betrayal. Only now Eli is a betrayer. She has hurled this name at her sister. She wants to break herself open and hand the pieces to any man that passes. This place has made her cheap and ugly. Eli sits and waits for retribution. 5 minutes pass. Mia returns with Ben. Ben's gonna walk us home, she tells Eli. Ben runs a hand through his short brown hair and smiles his agreement. But are you guys ready to go? Eli asks. I'm totally okay out here. We don't have to go yet. She doesn't want Mia to be kind to her now. She wants to be disregarded, to be treated like the trash she is. We're going home, Mia says, and grabs Eli's wrist. At 7 a.m., Eli is again on her hands and knees, scraped by the tiled floor, her head bobbing over the toilet in their hostel bathroom. Mia stands behind her, holding her hair back. Here is the violence she has been waiting for. The surge of chaos within and the expulsion. It'll be okay, says Mia. Eli leans in, ready for annihilation. Thank you.
Take a 10-minute break, so grab a drink, and we'll be back soon with Elissa Washuta and Pimone Triplett.